you know right? The podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, media, and entertainment. Nick Durst here along with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, we are very excited for our guest today. And if you're watching the video, you'll see some great Boston jerseys behind her, which really irks Mr. Calabrese here, being the big Yankee fan he is. So, Joe, why don't you introduce everybody here to our guest?
Yeah, as you alluded to, I hate the Red Sox jersey. It's terrible. Bruins are perfect. Right now, they're the best team in the league, so she gets a pass for that. But she's currently sports betting analyst for NESN. And Nick, another Q's grad with us. It's unbelievable, right? It's unbelievable. But yeah, we're very, very happy to have her on. It's been hard to pin her down, but thankfully she's able to do with us today. Claudia Bellofatto. Claudia, welcome to the show. I hope you enjoyed that introduction. I mean no ill will. I love Boston. It's a beautiful city. It's a clean city. I'm just a Yankees fan. I hate the Red Sox. I'm a Jets fan, and I hate the Patriots. We're Rangers fans, so we could do with or without the Bruins. But how are you today?
I'm good, and we hate you too, so it's fine. But there's still love there, right? Like, we understand why we hate each other, because we're both supposed to be great. You guys kept judged, so congratulations on that. And I apologize. This has taken way too long. I know we've been going back and forth, so I'm happy that I finally got on here with you guys.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And, nothing brings a spot on my face quite like reminiscing about the 2004 Red Sox, which I always like to say to Joe every time I get the chance.
Yep. I love it.
He's a Mets fan, though, so he doesn't know what winning is.
I'm sorry about that.
Claudia, what are you a fan of? What were your teams growing up?
Yeah, so my family's really big into football. It's funny because my dad doesn't really watch baseball, and I've sort of fallen in love with baseball as I got into the betting space, because that was one of the first sports I really started handicapping. I got into the strikeout market. I love K-props. That's sort of my thing. So I just fell in love with baseball over the past few years, really, which is funny because all my family does is sit at home on Sundays, make a ton of food, and watch the Patriots. All day is football. So I grew up as football really the main sport. I played basketball, soccer, lacrosse. So of course I like watching NBA, but it bothers me because of the way that the NBA is reffed and it's getting a little soft, guys. I have
the NBA is unwatchable.
The NBA bothers me for several reasons, but I grew up playing basketball, so I like that.
What position did you play in basketball?
I was shooting guard.
Okay.
I was shooting guard. Not going to say I was great, but I did play AU. I played year round, so it was fun. And so of course that's fun to watch. But when it comes to, like, if you had to ask me my favorite sport, it honestly is a toss up between football and baseball. It's just, I can get a lot more friends to watch football with me, and nobody will watch baseball with me. So that's usually the deciding factor.
Surprised you're not into the Celtics, even with the coaching controversy and everything from the offseason. They're one of the best teams in the NBA. Legitimate top 10 guy right now, Jason Tatum, probably the MVP favorite. Jaylen Brown is very good. So yeah, like, why aren't you into the Celtics more?
Oh, I'm totally into them. And I said coming into this season, they could run it back. I mean, and get as far into the playoffs as they did with the depth they have. Bringing Brogdon in was huge. And I said, too, this could be a year. I like to overreact a little. So I went to a preseason game and Jaylen Brown was going off and Tatum was sort of being more a facilitator, which we know he can do. And I tweeted out, I was like, I don't know, hot take, Brown could have a bigger season. Tatum's like, all right, shut up, Claudia. Let me do my thing. So I think that the fact that we have that 1-2 punch that nobody really else in the league has in terms of this caliber between Brown and Tatum makes us one of the best we are the best offense in basketball for a reason. But then it comes down to that depth, right? If Tatum and Brown aren't going off, then they have those role players. Brogdon can step in coming off of the bench and fill in those sort of absences. And then, of course, the defense is what the Celtics pride themselves on last season. Heading into this season, it wasn't the same. Now they're top 10 again in defense. So the one part that sort of other teams had an edge on us at the beginning of the season, that's gone. So I'm a Celtics fan. NBA just bothers me.
Your thoughts on Prince William and Kate attending the Celtics game, and the fact that his brother Harry and Meghan Markle released their Netflix trailer the same day?
Didn't they get booed?
here's the pop culture. I didn't know that. That is interesting, but
I'm a
it's
pop
so
culture
funny
guy.
because when they came in, like nobody cared. It's funny because the commentators and whatever TV station you were watching, they were like, oh my God, everybody's talking about at the end, like Brown, Tatum, everybody's like, yeah, we don't care. The coach was like, what did he say? He's like Jesus and Mary or something. I was like, oh God, like just stop asking basketball players about foreign royalty. They don't care. But that was cool to see, at least.
Claudia, if you had the opportunity to invite any celebrity or any sort of public eye figure to come watch you do a live report, who are you picking?
Oh, that's tough. See, it's funny because like if I'm thinking sports, I've already gotten to do sports on air with some like legends. I've done Chris Carter, Chris Long. Me and Chad Ochocinco actually played FIFA when I was living in Vegas. We did a show playing FIFA. So I think like big names like that, I would love for them to come watch me, but I've actually already done shows with them. I'm trying to think of celebrities. I don't really like celebrities that much. They bother me. I'm
like Mark Wahlberg.
Mark would be cool. Big Boston guy. Like, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio, love him. And he's in those Boston movies. That would be cool. But that's kind of where it ends. It's like Boston movie guys or sports players. Is that boring?
By the way, Ochocinco, fantastic on the FIFA coverage of the World Cup for Fox. But you're not into you don't watch reality TV or anything. You're just totally out on anything pop culture. You don't watch movies. Not a fan of the Cinephile podcast. You're just all about the sports bets.
That makes me sound like so boring. I have this problem. When people go into a job interview, they're like, what's your weakness? And they're like, well, I work too hard. Guys, that's literally my weakness. If I'm sitting there and watching something, I'm like, okay, let me just write an article. That's what I did last night. I'm like, let me just chill. I watched the games. I had the games on that I needed. I was like, let me throw Yellowstone on. I wrote 600-page article. Didn't really even have to. I was just like, I need to be doing something. So it is my issue. I'm trying to get more into pop culture because my co-hosts always make jokes on air and they're both like 10 years older than me. So I'm like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I'm slowly getting into it. Okay. I watched all the seasons of Yellowstone. So that's something, right? I've watched Mad Men, haven't watched Game of Thrones. So I'm slowly getting into it. I'm boring.
No, you're not. So I mentioned the Celtics specifically before. A couple of friends of mine have future bets on Jason Tatum to actually win the MVP. So can you pinpoint the exact moment you remember making your first bet?
That's a really good question. Nobody's asked me that.
We asked the tough questions.
It actually really is a tough one. I want to have an answer because I want to think back. It was definitely baseball because I had started. It's funny because I was living in Florida, and I mean, well, hopefully nobody's like listening to this to arrest me, but like it wasn't legal in Florida, right? So I wasn't betting yet. I couldn't, but I was making the bets, and I was talking with the different sharp guys. I was still learning it because I got into fantasy first and then transitioned over to gambling. So I was in Florida. The first sport I dug into was baseball. So that's when I fell in love with the prop market. So one of my first bets was without a doubt a prop bet. Can't tell you who it was. Can't tell you if it hit, but it was definitely that.
I don't think anybody's first bet was legal.
Yeah.
I mean, now the game has changed. And
he said it, not me.
Right. So at the top, I mentioned you went to Syracuse.
Yes.
A lot of our former guests have gone to Q's, one of the elite media schools in the whole country. You were a recruiting intern for the football team, and you were an in-game host, right? So you were active on campus. So tell us how your experience at Syracuse was like. And Nick always loves bundling this question when we ask about Syracuse. So I'm going to ask you, how were those winters? They were brutally cold, weren't they?
Guys, let me answer the winter question first because I'm being so dramatic with it for a reason. So when I was in Syracuse, everybody had the option to study abroad. I was like, I'm going to go. I had to choose between New York or LA. And I did New York because I was working at the Today Show. And then I was like, why did I just go from the cold to the cold? So that summer, I was like, you know what? I'm going to LA. So I was so happy in LA, living my best life, waking up at 5 a.m, going for runs on the beach. And then I come back to Boston. I'm like, oh my God, it's so cold here. My agent calls me, you want to go to Vegas? I'm like, yeah, it's hot over there, right? Love it. Go to Vegas. I'm working in Florida, working all these amazing hot pool places. And then NESN calls, my dream job. And I'm like, I really don't want to go back to the cold. And it is freezing. I wear my winter coat. I just took it off. I wear my winter coat around the office. Everyone's like, you're from here. I'm like, I don't care. I hate the cold. And I grew up in the cold. I went to college in the cold and I still hate it. So that's
soft.
your weather question.
You got soft in the warm climate. I mean, we're in New York. We're freezing too. But Joe's going to Arizona. He's going to Vegas. He's going to Nashville. He's going to Florida. I mean, this guy is always going to the warm. He's going to California soon. So you two definitely relate there.
I was going to say, you sound like me. That's how I am. Planning my next trip. But Syracuse was so great. And honestly, I think that's where I got like my hardo persona, I guess you could say. Maybe it was a Newhouse because everybody was a hardo. So I'm like, if I would say I was not the party girl in Newhouse, but like I still bartended on the weekends and like
were you in a sorority?
Stuff. I was Kappa Gamma.
Let me see your hand symbol.
Oh boy.
How bad is this though? I don't even know it. And I got in trouble so many times because during recruitment, the playoffs were on. So I was in Sig Chi watching NFL playoffs and the girls are like, where are you? I'm like, oh, I'm in Sig Chi. They're like, we're going to kick you out. I'm like, do it, man. Like, whatever.
Did you perfect the sorority girl squat though for the photos?
There might be a few of those out there.
Okay.
But either way, I was very involved on campus, both in the classroom, but outside. So like I said, I was bartending. I got to know a lot of sports players. Actually, I would like interview them on the court and then I would see them in the bar after. So it's so funny to see like the two sides of them. But then, yeah, like you said, I did like the student television. I did the sports radio over there. I did the in-game hosting my senior year, which was awesome. And I think that's where I got my hardo persona as well, because everybody would be going to the tailgates and I would be prepping for, the live games, but I didn't care because that was so much more fun to me. And I remember it was the season opener against Clemson. And like we beat Clemson once, what was it, like 2 years ago? And that's all people, 2-3 years ago, and that's all people talk about, which was an awesome game. I rushed to the field with my dad. So this is the season opener against Clemson and the whole stadium is filled. The Carrier Dome is a really cool spot to be. It's just never full. So it was my first time hosting this in-game experience and it was an absolute, I couldn't hear anything, but I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. That's how I knew. The fact that I could do that in front of thousands of people, I was like, yeah, okay. And I was so excited to do it. That's sort of how I knew that was my career path.
Yeah, because before then you're doing a bunch of internships. You're doing stuff in entertainment with 2fab.com, TMZ. You're doing stuff in news with WorkingNation, CNYCentral, NBC News, WFXT in Boston 25. So you get all those internships. You're getting all the momentum. No one does research like me. Joe could vouch for that. So during that time when you're doing all these internships, are you still saying to yourself, ultimately I want to do sports, or are you saying, let me just explore all these avenues and I'll see where I can go?
So that's what's interesting. When I applied to Newhouse, I wanted to do sports journalism. So you couldn't like apply for sports journalism. It was just the journalism degree. So I did that. I joined the sports radio and I was a freshman. It was almost like a hazing for the sports radio. They were like, make you go at 3 a.m. So I was walking to this place in the freezing cold, 3 a.m. I'm the only freshman, only girl there. And that's sort of how I got my feet wet. They taught me how to write radio script and all that. Unfortunately, I got a little intimidated by it because I was younger. So I transitioned out of that, got into the student television station, and that was hardcore news. So I fell into this whole news space, I guess you could say. And then in the classroom, they weren't very keen on sports. So I was even more news in the classroom. So I ended up doing news for the next 2 years. And then I'm getting towards the end of my 4 years of college. And I was like, I hate the news. I couldn't tell you anything about politics. I hate politics. What am I doing? Like, I'm so happy to be here, but this is not where my passion is. So I talked with the local sports. He actually, he was the sports director at the news station, but he also had classes at Syracuse and I had interned there. So he's like, take my class senior year. We basically put on a sports cast and I'll teach you how to do everything. So I did that senior year. Absolutely fell in love with it. I said, I know this is what I want to do. And from there, I actually went back to news. That's why it was very confusing. The long story short, once I graduated, I worked for the Nat Single A affiliate. So I did some baseball for a summer, and then COVID hit. So there was no sport. So I got into news in Florida again, just to reaffirm how much I hated news, did it for a year, and then got into fantasy, which led into betting. So I wanted to try out the different areas. Like I did TMZ in LA, and I did Today Show in New York City, just so I could know when I ended up with my job. I'm like, oh, I wish I had tried entertainment, or I wish I had tried news. Well, I did. And as you can tell, I hate pop culture. I hate the news. So sports is where I'm at. Long answer, but that is the answer.
Right. So it all led you eventually to do sports and to do sports betting, right? So you became an on-air host for EliteSportsBetting.com.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
That was my friend, who's not really my agent, but he has definitely helped me get some gigs. When I told him that I was getting into, so I had first gotten into the fantasy space, I was hosting some shows for The Athletic. And then they basically said, there's no women really in the betting space. So I called up my friend and I was like, do you know anyone in the betting space? And I think one of his friends had actually already reached out to me. I was like, do you know this guy? He's like, yeah. And I said, they basically want me to host a show for them, but I was just getting into gambling. So I really didn't know much. And that's where I definitely learned the most. Like I just asked a bunch of questions and the guys were super friendly there. So that was a show that I hosted daily, and it was just online. It was casual, laid back, but that is really where I learned to bet and where I learned to handicap. So shout out to those peeps, because that was my starting point.
What a great friend. Basically, your agent isn't taking a cut. I mean,
that's eventually he said I have to pay him back once I make big bucks. So a few more years, we'll see.
All right. If you hit big on a big bet.
Yeah, there we go.
So you bet on yourself. You're in this betting game here, right? You're cashing in, and then you get the big opportunity with WynnBET. How did that come about for you?
So I started doing those online digital shows, and I was like, social media is so big for this, and I'm sure you guys know, in the betting space specifically. So I was making sure my socials were up. I was getting some TikToks out there. And actually, next thing you know, before I was working with my current agency, a former agency reached out to me and they said, we have so many different companies looking for a woman in the sports betting space. So I was like, sure, whatever, signed with that agency. I really had like 10 different opportunities. Wow. They just reached out. They saw my reel. They saw what I was doing, which is funny because I'd only done one role in the gambling space, but luckily I did pick it up pretty quickly. So Wynn was one of them. And of course I had to decide, I had just quit my job in Florida, been home for a few months. Am I going to go move out to Vegas, somewhere I've never been? I had never been to Vegas, never went out there before I moved there. My agent's like, yeah, well, they want you out here in like 3 weeks or 2 weeks. I was like, okay, sure, whatever. I'm young. Why not? So I did. I just went out to Vegas and lived there for 8 months. And then next thing you know, NESN calls me like, hey, you want to come back to Boston? I was like, whiplash, but of course, I've always wanted to work here. And they told me they were launching the betting show. So it was honestly perfect timing. I say everything happens for a reason.
So how did you like Las Vegas? We were recently on a business trip in Las Vegas. Joe had a grand old time, if you could imagine. I mean, he's the single one, I'm the married guy. So Joe went hardcore.
There's the difference.
I did the damage in the buffets. Joe did the damage elsewhere. But what did you like about Las Vegas? He loved that dry heat. It can get a little chilly in the winter, though, from what I've been told. And how far were you from the Strip?
Yeah, so I was in Summerlin, which was, depending on traffic, like 15, 20 minutes outside, which is what I wanted. I was near a good TPC golf course, like really good restaurants, bars. So I was in my area. I really don't like busy cities. I hated the Strip. Like I maybe went to the Strip. I worked on the Strip because I worked at Wynn, which was so bizarre because I would walk into work at 8 a.m. and people are like ripping shots of JMO at the poker tables. I'm like, I can't tell if you're just waking up or if you haven't gone to bed yet, but I'll leave that to you. So I really didn't like the Strip. It just wasn't my speed. I sound like a loser. Like I swear I party and have fun, but work is very time consuming. So that's how I've always been. I just staying up till 6 a.m. is not my thing. It was cool to see, of course, like everybody talks about the Strip. So it was very cool to see but overrated if you ask me.
The Wynn is beautiful. And Joe, you got some background information on the Wynn when you were there by somebody you met at a bar. Why don't you share that information with our audience here?
Wait, which piece of information did we get?
But how much the Wynn was worth, and you met the guy whose father built
about
the Wynn.
the $1 billion.
And say it just like the guy who told you the story.
Oh wait, what was his name? Forgot.
Makes sense to forget, but just tell the story.
I don't remember all of it.
You're saying, "Oh, my grandfather built this. It's $1 billion. It's beautiful." Doesn't ring a bell? Wow. Hazy time for you in Las Vegas. No wonder why we had to almost call the cops to find it.
I was going to say you had too much time there.
All right. So moving on here, a hardcore pivot. So you mentioned back at NESN.
Mm-hmm.
How has it been like going home? Who says you can't go home? Well, you didn't say so. You went home.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. It's been so cool to be covering the sports that I grew up watching. Of course, having my family nearby is cool. My dad has his little group text with guys that he grew up in high school, and they're always watching my show, taking pictures of me on the TV. And honestly, like, my parents' happiness means so much to me. So that's been awesome. But really, I mean, I'm in the city of champions, and I'm on TV every single day talking about these teams. So honestly, this has been my dream job. Couldn't be happier.
Absolutely. So you do a lot of guest appearances, or you did on other places as well, such as Bettor's Eye with our buddy Keith Irizarry and Matt Stryker and some other stuff there. So how did those opportunities come about for you? And especially with something like that, a national platform, national TV, any nerves the first time doing those hits?
It's so funny. People always ask me if I get nervous. It's not nerves. It's more just like, I don't know what it is. Like I should have been extremely nervous for that. And I guess I was. I've done it so much now that I don't remember how nervous I was the first day. But once I'm on there, especially with guys like Matt and Keith, I'm just like, okay, this is just anything else. And those were just, honestly, Twitter. I think I was reached out to on Twitter about MLB and a lot of the other opportunities I've had. Some have come from my agent, but a lot of people will just reach out directly to me, which has been cool.
Very nice. All right. So you're from Boston. You live in Vegas. Spent some time in Los Angeles. You lived in Florida. I'm sure you live other places. What is your favorite city to live in? Boston, you can't say because it's your hometown. So where's your favorite place you've lived?
I would say I wouldn't say Boston because it's too cold here. I really did like Florida. Florida was a vibe. I lived in Gainesville, which was not where I would choose, but if I could go to Tampa or something, I would definitely do that. Just great weather, beaches. Come on. And Tampa is a good sports city.
Tampa's a big hockey town, and Joe frequents Tampa quite often.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I have. I've had some buddies who have gone through those teams. Some guys on the team now, but yeah, Tampa's fun. If Brady stayed over there, even though there's some rumblings he might come back to New England, I don't think that'll happen. But if I could,
going to Vegas, he's going to Las Vegas to save McDaniels.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Vegas would be far off my list. I'll never go. I probably will never go back there unless it's for like a bachelor or bachelorette party.
Joe is going to a bachelor party. He's going to a bachelor party next year, I heard, in Las Vegas.
Your favorite place?
Back in March, and I might be going back in October with our friend Johnny for his 30th birthday.
Too much.
Yeah, no, I could not do that. Absolutely not. I had my fill.
So, Claudia, what would you say in your life or your career is your right moment? So what I mean by that is a time or place where you wanted to pursue something, you asked somebody for advice, they said, you know what, Claudia, don't do that. That's not going to work. That's dumb. And you're like, you know what, I'm going to do anyway. And ultimately, you will see why it is that I'm right.
Gambling. When I quit my very stable TV job, TV reporter, which my parents thought was so cool, I told them, I was like, hey, by the way, I'm going to get into the fantasy and gambling space. And they literally said, are you sure about that? Do you really think that's gonna? And then I started doing these digital shows. So I'm made a little studio in their office, and they're walking by every day like, how many people are watching that show? I'm like, don't worry about it. It's all part of the process. And now I'm on TV every day in Boston. So that was my, I'm right time.
Love it. Nick loves when I ask this question. He always puts it on the rundown right at the bottom. So I have to ask, As somebody who is a spiritual person, somebody who studies astrology, what is your zodiac sign?
Ooh, this is fun. I'm a Virgo.
Oh no! Oh, that explains a lot.
Oh no!
Oh no!
What does that mean?
Well, again, that explains a lot. Virgos
Okay.
are
Curious.
very service-oriented people, which explains why you're such a hard worker, right? It's an earth sign, right? So all the earth signs to some level, to some degree, are very, very grounded. You've had to move around a little bit. So in your case, a little bit different. But I always like to go over this portion because a lot of people don't recognize this. There are three types of sign. So there are four elements, and then there are three cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs. So mutable signs are kind of like the most go with the flow of the signs, and there's one of each in every element. So that kind of explains maybe how you've been a little more loose when it comes to moving around, especially for work and stuff. And I imagine the saying that nobody cares, work harder, definitely applies to you, right? And also Virgo people tend to be very homely, like to be home a lot, like to take care of the home, in addition to being in service with other people. But on the negative side of things, might be a little too nitpicky, right? A little too
Nitpicky?
ridiculous in every single thing that they do.
100%.
Yeah,
1,000%. Yeah.
there you go.
That's why I never have anybody do anything for me because I need it done right.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nick loves that question. Always
Wow,
loves
that was literally spot on. Like spot on. I feel like I should pay you for that reading. Thank you.
Wow.
It was good. It was good.
Use the extra money. Thank you, Claudia, for your time.
Appreciate you guys.
Down a time with us. We really, really appreciate it. Thankfully, I may have a new career path opening up after this. So sorry, Nick. This may be the last episode. I think maybe I'll
You got to be a spiritual reader now.
Yeah.
Now, next week, I'm going to see you probably on NESN. Claudia's going to bring you on, and you're going to read the quarterbacks' Virgo signs, and we'll figure out how to place the bets based on their moon and their sun and stuff. Probably
that would be a fun segment. We might have something brewing here. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. The reason why I relate to Virgo is because my moon is in Virgo, right? So it's kind of like the internal side of things.
I'll pretend I know what that means, but it's fine.
I have no clue.
Fine. We'll get to that one day. I'll explain it. Anyway, what we do here is we always like to give our guests the last word. So if there's anything else you would like to share, promote for yourself, by all means, go right ahead. Claudia, thank you again for doing this with us.
Yeah, appreciate you guys so much. If you're in the Boston area, just check out our show, Ultimate Betting Show, at 5:30 every day on NESN. But we also have Lunchline. So no matter where you are in the world, NESNBets.com every day at 1. It's a little more laid back. It's a lot of fun. And I just hosted a seminar speaking to, it was women in sports, but there was also some men there, just sort of explaining like to you guys how I got into the betting space, giving some tips. So if anybody listening to this has any questions, definitely feel free to reach out to me. Twitter, Instagram at Claudia Bellofatto, Twitter, CBellofatto TV. I'm more than happy. Yes, I'm very busy, but I will get back to you at some point. So please reach out.
All right. That's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Claudia, my co-host, Joe Calabrese. I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.